just want to make sure that it was just that. Okay. Hopefully it doesn't die. Oh. I will need this.
Sorry.
You're good. Okay. So, my presentation is on Israel and Palestine and the ongoing conflict there. And the thesis was, are these war crimes or genocide? I am arguing that these are a genocide, the events happening there. So, the events happening in Gaza since October 2023 have ignited one of the most charged and consequential debates in international law and human rights, and that's whether Israel's military campaign against Palestinians constitutes genocide. So the next slides that I'm going to show you just are a testament to the scale of the devastation. And as you can see, it's just a total wasteland. There are just thousands and thousands of images of Gaza just totally leveled and destroyed like this. A great kind of anecdote that illustrates how bad it is that people who are on the ground in Gaza, they say that they have to use GPS on their phone in order to even find where houses or mosques or hospitals used to be, because the landmarks are gone. There's literally nothing that they can use to basically figure out where they are. Al Jazeera reports that Israel's offensive in Gaza has killed 50,000 Palestinians since October 2023, and Gaza's population has fallen about 6% since the start of the war. And those are outdated statistics as of, I think, January. But there's just miles and miles of this rubble, pretty much as far as you can see. The other important thing to note is that journalists are not allowed into Gaza, or at least it's incredibly difficult. And the Palestinian journalists have been being killed in very large numbers, which is a major problem. And recently there was something, I forget which news outlet it was from, but they were tagging along with a aid airplane because that's as far as Israel was allowing them in. And they were filming aerial footage that just showed this going on for miles and miles, and they were told by Israel not to share that, but of course they uploaded it anyway because that's a major human rights violation. So this is just a before picture. One thing that I really want to drive home here is that this was a major metropolitan city center, similar to New York City or Los Angeles. It had universities, it had public schools, private schools, mosques, churches, all sorts of different, everything that you would find in a major city. That was life there. Obviously, even up to that point, they still had lots of restrictions that made it a little bit worse than in Israel, but it was still functional. And then this is literally just the following year, that same location, it's just totally destroyed. And so let's see here. So Amnesty International has been describing these as a systematic assault on Gaza's civilian population that amount to killings, starvation policies, and mass displacement that demonstrate the intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza. So there's a few more slides. This is a before and after of a region in the southwest area of Gaza. It's a little hard to tell on the map here, but if it says north is that way, so if in your head you just kind of tilt it that way. What's here is not rubble, but actually tents. So as the areas in Gaza have been destroyed, everyone essentially just has to go and find areas where they can, come together, because obviously living by yourself is now basically impossible. You have to have people around you to try and survive. And so all of these little structures, well, this is all the empty space you can see between buildings, and then all of that's just utterly filled in with tents everywhere. The next few slides just are a map of the destroyed regions. So as you can see here, just a few days after the October 7th attacks by Hamas, you have regions that were starting to be bombed and destroyed by the IDF. And it seems kind of small at first, but then literally just less than 2 months later, we have huge areas that are destroyed. And then by January, most of the habitable space has already been destroyed. So that's not even 6 months into the conflict, which is why the next slide isn't that much different. So most of the habitable land in Gaza had already been basically just made uninhabitable within the first year of the conflict. And so the longer it dragged on, the more and more just worse it got. And so these are just some helpful infographics from BBC. After 15 months, an estimated 1.9 million people have been displaced, which is 90% of Gaza's population. So again, just imagine that parallel of New York City or Los Angeles, where pretty much everyone has to go and find this very small area full of tents in order to survive because everything else has been destroyed. And then the debris produced is about 17 times the total from all Israel-Gaza conflicts since 2008. And it says that the removal of all of it may take up to 21 years to clean up. Mm-hmm. So just to give you an idea, about 600,000 in 2008 in tons, 2 million tons in 2014, 370,000 in 2021, and then 50 million tons as of 2024. Now obviously it's not going to get that much higher because, like I said, pretty much everything's already destroyed by now. There's not much else to add on top of that. And so for decades, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been analyzed through frameworks like occupation, apartheid, and war crimes. But genocide is not just a moral accusation. It's a legal classification defined by the 1948 Genocide Convention. And there are obligations within that for prevention and for punishment. So the question is not whether Israel's actions are unlawful. There are countless international bodies that, such as the Human Rights Watch and the UN, have already affirmed that they are. The question is whether they cross the legal and moral line into genocide, and if so, what that demands of the world. So the Genocide Convention defines genocide as acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. And these acts include killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, and deliberately inflicting living conditions calculated to destroy the group, imposing measures intended to prevent births, and forcibly transferring children. So the other thing about it is that genocide is distinct from war crimes and that intent is important to be established, which we'll get to shortly. And then a man named Gregory Stanton came up with the 10 stages of genocide, which we'll also get to later, which is globally used to analyze warning signs and the ongoing processes of genocide. So let's see, what was the next one? All right. The University Network for Human Rights has explained that this definition doesn't hinge solely on killing, but a broader recognition that genocide can be enacted through policies of slow destruction, such as deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about a group's destruction. So this is really important to understand for modern genocides, which do not often resemble the mass-scale industrial genocides that we saw in the Holocaust, but instead involve the incremental destruction of a people through things like blockade, displacement, starvation, and continuous bombardment. So the University Network for Human Rights had said that approximately 14,500 of the Palestinians killed in Gaza have been children. Obviously that number continues to rise, especially as the starvation recently that has ramped up gets worse. And I'll talk more about that later. Israel killed more children in the first 4 months of its assault than in all of the world's conflicts in the past 4 years combined. Israeli forces have killed Palestinians regardless of their protected status under international law, with the current bombardment constituting the deadliest conflict for journalists ever recorded and the number of UN personnel killed reaching a degree never seen in history. And the point about the UN personnel being killed is that this has been pretty much the deadliest conflict that they have ever had to help. So far, their death toll in UN aid workers is hundreds, just in the past couple of years. Obviously, people being injured is a lot higher than that. But that just shows that, you know, even with all of your uniforms and the trucks and stuff like that, they're still being targeted. So it's a major issue there. And then Amnesty International's report documents acts such as killings, starvation policies, and mass displacement in Gaza since October 2023, arguing these constitute genocide as defined by international law. And they also said that the cumulative impact of Israeli policies meet the legal definition of genocide. So, the reason why I bring that up is because a broad but a legally precise definition of genocide matters for prevention. Because as the UN Office on Genocide Prevention has repeatedly emphasized, early recognition of genocidal patterns allows intervention before the mass slaughter occurs. If genocide is left to be defined narrowly in a way that it only applies to things like the Rwanda genocide or the Holocaust, you know, the world is always going to recognize it after the graves have already been filled. So it just makes it a useless definition. And so Gaza's ongoing catastrophe demonstrates the price of delaying action. One thing that I noted here is that the UN humanitarian aid chief said that there is a long legal process going on right now in order to get it classified as a genocide, but he said that we can't use that as an excuse not to take action. Unfortunately, a lot of politicians around the world are using that as an excuse to not take action on it. So Human Rights Watch has documented the deliberate deprivation of basic needs, widespread civilian deaths, and starvation policies that amount to acts of genocide under international law. Amnesty International echoes this, compiling testimonies, satellite imagery, and humanitarian analysis to show how Israel's actions meet the legal definition of genocide. I know a lot of those quotes probably sounded like they repeated themselves, but I just figured it was important to include lots of different groups that were all saying the same thing, just demonstrating how widespread this perspective is, and that you know, it's really egregious that our government has not taken more action on this to prevent it, and in many ways is actually supporting it. So the what was this? Oh yeah, the specific actions are very clear. There's mass killings, starvation policies, mass displacement, and destruction of infrastructure. So with the mass killings, there are aid sites that have been set up by the, I believe, various United States groups and also Israeli military groups. I don't know the exact names, but they are aid sites that are run not by non-government organizations, but they're militarized. And these have been people have come to know these as kill zones because of the high casualty rate. And that's just because of the intimidation tactics that the IDF and other military soldiers have been using. You know, there's tons of videos of people lined up for food, and then they all have to crouch down on the ground because soldiers are just firing into the sand next to them. And a lot of times people get killed in the crossfire without actually doing anything, you know, illegal. And then with the mass displacement, we already went over how everyone lives in tents at this point. There's been families that have had to move upwards of, you know, 10, 11, 12 times throughout the past couple of years because each place that they move to becomes unsafe. They have to move again. And so it's just a constantly changing scene where just the walls continue to close in, so to speak. Opinio juris frames these actions in the starkest terms. The slow, systematic infliction of living conditions in Gaza may meet the Convention's definition of genocide. And this is a warning that it's a warning that this is precisely the kind of destruction that the treaty was designed to stop. So these are just a few images. I understand that they're very disturbing to look at, so you need to look away, feel free, but I just figured it was important to put this in here. There are just countless examples of people being pulled from the rubble, children, babies, whole families. It's just been a very difficult process to research this. I was unaware of the scale and just depth of this up until like the past month. I had known that this was an issue the past couple of years, but I hadn't really done a deep dive into it. This one in particular, I cropped out just because there's a couple other kids directly to the left that are in much, much worse condition, and I'm not even going to describe it because you can imagine what that would look like, and that's why I did not include it. And then of course we have all of the mass graves. This is just a daily reality for Palestinians the past couple of years, and this just continues to get worse. And you know, I've just seen countless videos of you know, families, fathers, mothers, sons, daughters going to the body of a family member, identifying it, just breaking down in tears and screaming, and it's been it's difficult for me to talk about it, but it is like absolutely nothing compared to actually being on the ground and being the person dealing with it yourself and just watching your entire family disappear before your eyes and all of that. So the thing about genocide is that it's the only crime in international law that hinges on intent. So the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights explains that proving genocidal intent requires evidence that actions were undertaken to destroy a protected group as such. And critics, including the American Jewish Committee, argue that intent has not been conclusively proven and that Israel is targeting Hamas rather than Palestinians as a group. So I'm not saying that these aren't war crimes, I'm just saying that they are, in addition to being war crimes, it is also a genocide.
Yes. Genocide is a war crime.
Yeah.
Yes.
As Al Jazeera notes, intent in the genocide case against Israel is not hard to prove, pointing to statements by officials calling for Gaza to be flattened or its population to be permanently removed. Historical research bolsters this claim. Mondo Weiss uncovered archival materials indicating a genocidal intent in historical policy documents. Now I'm not going to get into that because I'm focusing more on just the past couple years. And the Middle East Council on Global Affairs goes further, documenting statements by Israeli officials that can be reasonably interpreted as admissions of genocidal policy. So these two links here, they go to a database of over 500 statements compiled by the Law for Palestine database from ministers, military officials, Knesset, which is like their Congress or Senate, is their government group, and media figures, soldiers, that all call for annihilation, starvation, forced displacement, all the stuff we talked about. And so I'm just going to quickly read through a few of the statements. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher the names because I'm not good at the pronunciation. On the 9th of October 2023, shortly after the Hamas attack, he said, "We are fighting human animals and we are acting accordingly." And he declared a complete siege, no electricity, no food, no fuel to Gaza. The Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich on 29th of April 2024 said there are no half measures. Rafah, Deir al-Balah, Nusrat, total annihilation. Thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. So he's using, he's invoking biblical language that's been historically associated with ethnic elimination, which has been a tactic in the rhetoric in recent years with the increasing of the more of the right-wing movement in Israel. The energy and later the defense minister Israel Katz in February 2024 said that all the civilian population in Gaza is ordered to leave immediately. They will not receive a drop of water or a single battery until they leave the world. President Isaac Herzog declared that the entire nation of Palestine is responsible for the October 7th attack and asserted that we will fight until we break their backbone. The former Major General Giora Island stated Gaza will become a place where no human being can exist, and asserted that creating a severe humanitarian crisis in Gaza is a necessary means to achieving the goal. Major General Ghassan Alian warned that Gaza will receive no electricity and no water, only destruction. You wanted hell, and you will get hell. I could go on and on and on with all of these, but obviously there's a time limit. I'll just do like two more. Galit Distel, he's a Knesset member, and he called for erasing all of Gaza from the face of the earth. And Ariel Kalner declared one goal, Nakba, a Nakba that will overshadow the Nakba of 1948. And so, for those of you who don't know, the Nakba was a event that occurred in 1948 that was kind of the initiation of this whole conflict over the past 70 years, where a lot of Palestinians were killed and displaced. So anywho, there's 500 on both of these links here. One of them is actually just a list of statements that were compiled after the ICJ lawsuit was put into motion, which just shows that even after legal action was being taken, they continued to ramp up their rhetoric. So let's see. So then we'll just get into this 10 stages of genocide. There's classification, symbolization, discrimination, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, persecution, extermination, and denial. It's a big mouthful, and there have been numerous groups and individuals that have said that all 10 stages of these are currently present in Gaza. And just as an example, Palestinians have been classified and symbolized as the other. So that's the classification right there. Discriminatory laws and blockade enforce the separation. So there's the discrimination. Dehumanization is overt in the rhetoric, referring to them as human animals. And then military organization and polarization have made just dialogue impossible between any groups, especially whenever they label anyone advocating for Palestinian rights as they're part of Hamas and therefore we can't negotiate with them. Let's see. And then there's the mass evacuations and starvation. So that gets into the final stages down there with the persecution, extermination, and then the last stage, which I think we have been deep in for a very long time, is denial. I would say the past couple years, really since this started, if you just look at how it has taken pretty much up until this recent food crisis for a lot of media outlets to finally start actually taking it more seriously. Denial is the final stage that lasts throughout and always follows genocide, and it includes covering up evidence, attacking truth tellers, and framing atrocities as self-defense. And the fact that the Gaza genocide has been allowed to continue for nearly 2 years suggests that denial has not just followed the extermination, but it has enabled it. And so, the reluctance for global leaders to name it as such has really just shown that the pattern that Stanton's model was designed to prevent is just alive and well in Gaza. So obviously there's a little bit of resistance to the stages. I already talked about that. But obviously there's a little bit of resistance to framing it as a genocide. The Hill, for example, argues that while Israeli actions may constitute war crimes, the legal threshold for genocide has not been met. The American Jewish Committee emphasizes the need for specific intent and warns against diluting the term. Obviously, those are pretty hollow arguments, in my opinion, especially after we went through all of those statements and the very clear actions that back those up. So, these arguments are really important because precision in international law prevents overuse of the term genocide as a political weapon, but it also reveals a dangerous trap. If the definition is interpreted so narrowly that it only applies fully to completed genocides like Rwanda or Holocaust, it will always be applied too late. Human Rights Watch warned that deliberate deprivation and mass civilian death cannot be treated as collateral damage when the cumulative impact is predictable and sustained. Yep. So anywho, these the comparisons are important because they reveal how genocide often unfolds slowly and incrementally through a long process of cultural and physical destruction. And because it's so slow and drawn out, the world becomes desensitized to it, and so it's much more difficult for us to act. I think one of the reasons why the Rwanda genocide got the attention that it needed eventually is because it was happening on a very quick time scale, whereas this has been a much slower, drawn out process, even more slowly than obviously the Holocaust. And so the Genocide Convention, it wasn't drafted to be a way for us to give after the fact recognition. It was meant to prevent it from happening in the first place, and that's especially why those 10 stages are important, because most of the first 7 stages or so, there's no one's being killed at that point. And so, but they're all leading up to eventually people get killed and erased. So the longevity of the Gaza genocide has just demonstrated how the denial has paralyzed the globe. So yeah, anywho, the evidence is pretty overwhelming, I think, and there's obviously debate around it, but as the University Network for Human Rights reminds us, the convention imposes an obligation to prevent it, and that obligation is not met by silence. It is met by speaking plainly. Gaza is not just a tragedy. It is not just a war crime. It is a genocide, and it's one that we still have the power and the duty to stop. So for those of you who are new to this, if any of you are, there's a really great Instagram account called We Are the Peace, I believe, and they just have a lot of on-the-ground footage and testimony from people in Gaza, interviews, scenes like this unfolding, and it just gives you a much more raw perspective of what's happening, unfiltered from any kind of news outlet. So it's just horrific what's going on there. Obviously the starvation has become an issue. People have used the argument that I think this was from a Fox news anchor lady. She was saying that these parents should be ashamed that they're filming their kids and they're just trying to get attention, and that the parents look fine, therefore they should just feed the kids, and that they're taking advantage of kids who already have congenital deformities and stuff to try and make it look worse. Just anything to throw them under the bus and act like it's not a big deal. So this is just, is it not going to work? Oh, lovely. Well, there were 2 videos here that were supposed to appear. I don't know why that. Well, anywho, it was a video testimony from the UN head of humanitarian aid, and it was just a short 2-minute clip of him talking about how he's been all over the world. He's been to Sudan, he's been to Yemen, he's been to lots of different major humanitarian crises that are happening. Obviously, the Sudan crisis is happening on a much larger scale as far as number of people. But he did say that he has never seen anything like what's happening in Gaza, and that it has haunted him ever since, and he's actually started going to therapy as a result of the Gaza trip in particular. And then the last clip that I was going to show, but it's not going to appear, is just a clip of Donald Trump being asked, I think yesterday or the day before, if he believes what's happening in Gaza is a genocide, and he was like, oh no, it's not a genocide, it's a war, it's a, you know, it's awful, and he just, you know, gave his canned response and you know, ignored it. So anyway, that's my presentation. I
Great.
probably went over the time limit.
Thank you.
but-
I think we probably have time for one, maybe two questions. Have any? I think it was pretty thorough. It was well researched, well documented. I'll just mention that I have sort of lamented that South Africa is the country to have brought the case before The Hague, because when I was in South Africa, Bashir, who was actually convicted of genocide by The Hague, that's the Darfur Sudanese genocide. Bashir traveled to South Africa and was in Pretoria and Johannesburg, and when the international community says, South Africa, you are obligated to arrest Bashir, who has been convicted of genocide, Jacob Zuma and the South African government actually snuck him out of the convention, actually motorcaded him through the city, took him to Waterkloof Air Force Base, and on a South African government plane allowed him to escape. And I'm like, whoa, South Africa bringing a case of genocide, yet the government used an Air Force base to let Bashir, a convicted genocide person, escape.
Yeah, that's...
And so I just lament that it was just South Africa that presented the case.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
But it's a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm no fan of Jacob Zuma in South Africa. Wonderful. Angel, your presentation is up, I think.